We're going to start wiring the servos up here today. To do that, we're going to need this part here. This is a special part that I had made. Be careful that you're not bending these back and forth a lot, because if these do break off right here, then you might run into some issues. So just be kind of careful when you're handling this thing. Now what you'll notice is there's two groups of wires. There's a set of wires that are coming off of one side here, and there's another set of wires that are coming off the other side. If you look on the capacitor, that's what this part here is called. You'll notice that there's a side that should say negative. It has a stripe on one side. Okay, and that stripe is actually the negative, or the what is also called the ground. Okay, so that's this side. So these four wires here that are on this side are the wires that are going to be what we're going to call negative or ground. Okay, and then the other side, which are connected to the side that doesn't have the stripe on it, these are going to be our positive wires. Okay, so we got four of each. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take these wires. Don't worry about the colors of them. What's important is that you have this group of wires, which are negative, and then this group of wires over here, which are positive. So you just need to identify where your negative on the capacitor is, and then take the group of wires that are coming out from that. Okay, so the negative wires, that's what I'm going to refer to these group as from now, or from here forward, and then I'm going to refer to these as the positive wires. Okay, so what you'll do is take one of the negative wires, and then we're going to be, well, actually, let me back up a sec. At this point, you're going to need to have your Arduino plugged into your socket. Okay, now it's important that when you're plugging this thing in, that you orient it so that it's in there correctly. So what I mean by that is, if you look closely on the board, like right here, it says D12. So right here, when you look on the chip, this should say D12 right here. So the D12 corresponds to D12 right here. Okay, this corner down here, it says, if you look, it says V in. And then if you look really close here, it also says V in. So it has to be in there like I'm showing it to you right there. Okay, so then you're going to need this. This is your little makeshift screwdriver, which we can use to loosen and tighten these screws right here. If you have something different that fits that, you're welcome to use it. Okay, I'm going to use this little screwdriver here just because it's going to be easier and quicker. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to want to do is take my negative group, okay, and I'm going to just grab one of the wires from that negative group. Doesn't matter which one, but pick one. And then this wire will go into where it says GND for ground. So I'm going to stick that into the side right here. Okay, if it doesn't push into that hole, it's going to be pushed into the black part where you know the hole, the opening. You're going to push it in. If it doesn't push in, loosen the screw up. Once you get it pushed in, you're going to tighten that down. Now it doesn't have to be super tight, just you can get it snug. Okay, and so I have then one negative wire connected into where it says GND. Okay, so now I have three of these negative wires left. Okay, then I'm going to jump over here to my other group, my positive group. I'm going to grab one of those wires, doesn't matter which one. One of those wires are going to go in onto the board where it says 5V. Okay, so I'm going to push this one wire into the 5V, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to snug this down. All right, so that's what I have now. Now I have three wires left for positive, and I have these three wires here, which are not the negative. Essentially what I've just done is I've made it so these wires here connect to negative, and then these three wires here connect to positive. Okay. All right, then the next step would be to get our board, or get our project with the servos in it. And I have three of them. Okay, I have S1, Servo 1, let me back that up, Servo 2, and Servo 3. Okay, now where do each of these connect? Well, Servo 1, we'll start with servo number 1. Okay, if you look at these wires, there's three of them. There's an orange, a red, and a brown. So basically, the brown is negative, The black is positive, and that's what gives the servo its power. And then this remaining wire, the orange one, this is the wire that is used to connect to or connects to the Arduino, and the information as far as where the position of the servo should be, it's sent over this wire right here. We will connect that last. What we're concerned with now is the brown wire and the red wire, which is going to give the servo its power. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to take one of the positive wires. Okay, one of them, doesn't matter which one, but one of the positive wires from this group, and that's going to plug into the middle. Okay, the middle is where the positive is on the servo. Okay, so I push that in there. Then I'm going to grab one of the negative wires from that group, and I'm going to push that into the brown. Okay, so now this servo will be connected to power. Okay, just be careful that they don't unplug. I'm going to go to the next servo number 2. Same thing. Pay close attention so that you're grabbing the right wire. I'm going to grab another one of the wires from the negative. Okay, and I'm going to stick that into the brown. And then I'm going to take one of the wires from the positive group, and I'm going to put that into the middle, so it's connected to the red wire on the servo. Okay, and then this one has now power connected to it. Then lastly, I'm going to take servo 3. I should have 2 wires left. I'm going to grab the wire from the negative side of the group, or the negative group of wires. Okay, that's going to plug into the brown. Okay, and the last wire, I should have 1 positive wire left. That's going to plug into the red. Okay, so now the servos all have power. Now we just need to connect it so that that last empty one here, so we have an orange wire left on each of the servos. The orange wires are where the information comes from the Arduino to tell it which position to go to. We're going to use 3 white wires. Now I had a little bit of change since I gave these to you. So once you pick your 3 white wires, we may need to cut the ends of them, but don't do that quite yet. Take your wire, one of your short ones. Let's start with the first one, the S1, the first servo. Okay. Oops. Getting messy here. So I follow, this is my wire. This is my first servo, the connector for S1. Okay, so I should have that 1 hole left in there. Go ahead and take whatever end looks shorter. Let's see here. Let's push it into that empty. Okay, so you can see I've pushed it in, but I still have a lot of wire exposed. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you have an old scissors or something that can cut this wire, we're going to want to cut off so that we just have enough of the wire strips so that we can push it into that connector. So I'm going to cut off a little bit of that. Okay. So you can see I've shortened it up a little bit. So now when I push it in there, okay, it's pushed in, but I don't have all that extra sticking out. Okay. All right, so I have that all set up. Now here's where, if you have a little bit of masking tape, it would be a good time where what you could do is you could just wrap this up with a little bit of masking tape to hold this together. And I'm not talking about a lot of masking tape, just a tiny little bit. Sorry, I just realized my masking tape wasn't right in front of me. Okay, so let me do that. Okay, so I have all of those there. I'm just gonna use a piece of tape to wrap around all of those to hold them together onto the connector. Okay, so here it is, my first servo. Here's this 1 wire that I have. I'm going to have you do the same thing on this one. Just make it so that you have maybe a 1/2 inch or so of wire. You can kind of see compared to my thumbnail how big it is. Okay. All right, this is the wire coming from S1. Okay, following it back. This one's going to connect up to D6. So if I find D6 on here, I'm going to stick it into the hole for D6. And then I'm going to tighten that down. Okay. And then I'm going to repeat that process for the next 2. So right off the bat, actually, I'm going to just cut this wire down just a touch. Again, an old pair of scissors or even a nail clipper will work if you don't have that. Now I'm going to go to S2, follow that back so that I know I have S2. Okay. And I'm going to stick that into the last hole, which connects to that orange wire. And then what I could also do is, now that I have all three plugged in there, I can take a little piece of masking tape just to make sure that these wires don't get unplugged. Okay. And now those are connected. Now the other end of this, that's going to go into D9. So I'll plug that into the hole there and tighten that one down. Now when you're putting these in, just make sure you don't have an abundance of bare wire showing right here. We just don't want them to accidentally bend and touch something else. Okay, last wire. Same thing, I'm just going to cut it down just a touch. Okay, now I'm going to take my last servo, S3. I should have one hole left here. So I'll plug one end in to connect up to the orange. I'm going to use a little bit of masking tape to hold things in place just so they don't unplug. Okay. And then this remaining wire here is going to go into D10. And then I'm going to just snug that up. Okay. And that completes the connection of the servo. So the next thing to do will be to test them.